Great. So we do have one question already for Osvaldo. So this is about metallurgy. So do you think that your metallurgy process will require fuming like other Bolivian ores, or could you achieve economic recoveries through gravity and flotation?
Yes, we have this ore sorting that's helping a lot. That's been, analyzed in Germany. And we have also the traditional methods that will be gravity and then differential flotation for this. It's not an issue. We had very good results. So we have about 90% for base metals and about 60% for tin recovery.
Great, thank you. And Fawzi, I know that you touched on the metallurgy of the Cornish Metals project as well, but are you able to tell us a bit more about exactly the plans for the processing of your ore when you begin production?
Yes, sir. So with regards to the processing, we have a lot of historical records, and historically, let's say in the later years, the later years in the late 80s into the 90s, the recoveries for tin were around 88%. We believe that we can optimize that further with the use of ore sorting at the beginning of the processing route, moving into gravity separation and flotation to extract the tin. We're looking at targeting 88 to 90% of tin recoveries from South Crofty.
Fantastic, thank you. And so also with South Crofty, dewatering process, so it's expected to take about 18 months. And are there plans to expand on your mineral resource sort of throughout that time?
So the water treatment, as you mentioned, it's 18 months. It's already started. It's taking the existing mine water. We estimate around 8 million cubic meters of mine water currently in the mine since it flooded post its stopping operation in 1998. We're pumping it out at about 25,000 cubic meters per day. And treating the water to near drinking water quality that's going back into the Red River, so improving the quality of the water in the Red River in the process. In terms of drilling, we need access to the underground mine working, so as the water levels decrease, we'll be able to access different mine workings to continue drilling, and that drilling will be more confirmation drilling to upgrade inferred into indicated resources to complete the feasibility study, and beyond that we'll start looking into further resource expansion as we have better access to all the workings of the mine.
Great, thank you. And I've just got a question for Jeremy as well. So why has the EV part not increased in the last year?
Electric vehicles?
Yes.
Well, actually, electric vehicles is one of the most exciting, interesting parts because, firstly, the amount of tin electric vehicles is greater than a conventional vehicle, as I've mentioned. But also that, especially in China, the electric vehicle production generally is higher in advance of what might be expected. So I think that we definitely can expect thousands of tons more tin in electric vehicles in the near future. So I think that probably in terms of what we're seeing is it is actually further ahead, in fact, not behind what we expect. And it was something we need to keep an eye on into the future. The main reason why it is because if you think about electric vehicles, you think about the AC and DC power going in, that those are very big solder joints. This is not your mobile phone. So that's the main reason, it's larger solder joints, but there are other applications inside EV, and so I would say definitely space to watch.
And just to follow up on that actually, sort of what's the comparison of the amount of tin that's used in an electric vehicle versus the traditional internal combustion engine vehicle?
Okay, so that's a work in progress because actually it's a very difficult question because it's a moving target. Obviously, as we all know, cars are becoming computers. So even a conventional vehicle is changing very fast in terms of that question. So it's a moving target, and also it's a very broad target. So there's a very difference between a very basic car and a very autonomous vehicle, for example, which is going to use huge amounts more tin. So it's a very big thing. But on average, the sort of numbers that we're looking at here is roughly about, when taking into account everything in a car, not just electronics, we use an average figure of about 500 grams per vehicle, which we're thinking is now doubling roughly on average for electric vehicle. But that's a space to watch.
So we talk about miniaturization with solar electronics. Has miniaturization reached its limits now?
Well, that's the very important question, actually. And so we can track that. The problem is the dynamics. So for a market analyst, they said it would be very easy if it was a very straightforward, simple curve. But the problem is that the dynamics are too complicated to do this very well. But certainly we can see that solder use has been relatively flat compared to the growth in electronics overall. So it's about, the growth in electronics overall until recently has been about 4 or 5%, whereas solder has been flat. So you'll be able to see, you can model that as a negative. But we can see that decreasing, and we can see, especially in China. So this whole miniaturization happened first outside China, second inside China, and so now inside China is coming to a place where it's comparable. And then after that, once we do see that endpoint that you're talking about, we would expect solder use to start taking off into the sort of much closer to the 3 or 4 or even 5% growth of electronics. So I think we're almost there in summary, but it's hard to model.
So we're picking up a lot of questions about tin demand at the moment, so I'll do one more for you, Jeremy. So we have a question, can you see tin being substituted out of solar in the future?
That's an important question and a good question. So we've just come back from China, and a lot of this is happening in China, and I must say that's correct. So we're using a figure at the moment about 74 tons per gigawatt, but we're being told that tin will be thrifted out of solar to a large extent. They're changing the design of the solar panels very much so, and they're using alternative technologies to join it as well. So we would expect certainly some thrifting over to 2030 quite sharply. But on the other hand, that's the unit volume. But on the other hand, the total amount of gigawatts is going up very, very fast. So the balance between that thrifting and expansion is something we still need to look at. But it's a very good question right now, and it's something we've only just learned in China, and we need to pay attention to. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And another question for Osvaldo.
Yes.
So the Iska deposit is split into the polymetallic region and the tin domain as well. What kind of timescales do you see for extraction for sort of each of those?
So we have the tin, it's related to polymetallic. We have the overprinting between high temperature and low temperature, which calls telescoping. So besides that, we have components like tin domain, the silver, zinc, and lead domain, but they will be separately working in the future. So the polymetallic is the most enriched part that's going to pay back all the investment, and then we'll continue with other domains too.
Okay, thanks. So there's the possibility of doing them sort of at the same time rather than working on the upper domain first.
Yeah,
and then
very likely, but we are just half, stage in the exploration. We just have a couple more years to keep exploring and then define.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And I've got one final question for Jeremy, actually. So could you please share your view on the WAR state situation and any potential timeline of resumption of production? As difficult a question as that is.
Yes, so in the room here we have our China analyst, Daniel Shah. You should maybe ask him a little bit later. He can give you more detailed insight because he's in touch with the local traders there. But as we understand it, on the mining suspension, there is a plan to reopen the mines. There is an investment plan that's being put forward. It's got much more complicated recently with a very significant issue with telecoms scam and Chinese intervention in terms of trying to sort out that problem. There's also a civil war that's raging on the borders, which is threatening to come in. And so there's a huge amount of disruption that's taking the government's attention at the moment. We feel that probably, especially with the Lunar New Year coming up in February, that it is most likely now that this plan will come to fruition at the earliest after the Lunar New Year.
Great, thank you. And we have a question for Fawzi as well. So South Crofty, is the plan to make a refined tin ecosystem in Cornwall? What kind of plans are there for smelting?
So that is a good question. When we talk about critical supply of tin to the UK, to Europe, currently there is no primary tin smelting capacity in Europe. If we were today to be producing, we'd be producing concentrate from the mine, that would have to find a home to be smelted where there aren't any options. So it is something that Cornish Metals is exploring in terms of what are the opportunities in terms of downstream processing of tin, whether it be within Cornwall, UK, Europe is still not defined, is something we need to look at. And it is, you know, it's quite complex in that it needs to be competitive as well, and power costs will play a very big role in terms of where the placement of a potential smelter can be.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so the refined tin is a sort of really important question to ask as well. So Osvaldo, can you tell us about any plans for refining of the concentrates produced at Isca in the future?
We have a smelter in Bolivia, what was used also by Mincer from Peru. But I think the capacity will be, you know, much greater. So we are planning to have an important talk with the government, probably to install a new smelter. So it's going to happen maybe next year. Tom Larson, who's the president of the company, is going to meet the Ministry of Mines in March. Probably at that time they will visit that point.
Great, well, thank you very much. We are running a little bit behind schedule, so I suggest that we move to a break and we will reconvene at 10:15. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Freddie.